months ago, I was alone in my apartment getting ready to host my friends for a Christmas party. I decided to take a cube of cheese from the plate and eat it, but I must have swallowed it wrong because it got lodged in my throat and I was choking. Full on choking, like I couldn't even get a single breath of air. I started to panic because I was alone, and I didn't think I'd have time to get a neighbor or anyone who could help me. All of a sudden, I remembered a scene from 30 Rock where Tina Fey is choking alone in her apartment, and she used a chair to Heimlich herself. I did the same, and the cheese came out, and I could breathe again. I just plopped down on the floor and contemplated the fact that if I had not been successful, my friends would have arrived expecting a Christmas party and found me dead on the floor instead. So I guess in a weird way, I owe my life to Tina Fey. Why did that all just rhyme? That all just rhymed. Yeah, that is really scary. I do remember, I can laugh about it now. I was getting ice cream with my friends, and my best friend and I went into the ice cream shop in Lyon in the city, and we had two other friends outside, a couple, and while we're in there laughing, talking, choosing our ice cream flavors, my friend is literally outside, choking, turning red, can't breathe, very dangerous. Strangers are around her, her husband's a nurse, trying to help her unblock her throat to get some air, and finally she did when we came back outside. She looked like she was crying, and we were like, hey, here's your ice cream. We didn't see anything of what happened, and they told us, like, I almost just died. Absolutely insane, super scary. I always get a little bit of panic when I swallow one of those big vitamins, those big dry vitamins. I'm like, oh gosh. Okay, next one. I was stationed in England in the mid-1970s, a time when the IRA was setting bombs off in London. We had been shopping at Harrods department store, finished shopping, and left the store. Just minutes after leaving, a bomb exploded in the department my wife and I were shopping in. We went to the nearest pub and got a drink. Okay, this I do not understand. If they're dropping bombs over London and the building that you just left got bombed, how in the world do you go to a pub down the street and get a drink? Thank God they were okay. A while ago, me and my friend were sitting in Hyde Park in Sydney, Australia, having lunch together under this massive tree. A ladybug landed on her and she freaked out and said that we need to move right now. I just laughed at her, but she said every time a ladybug landed on her, something bad happened. I agreed to move and we got under a new tree. She had finally calmed down when we heard this massive crash behind us. A massive old branch had fallen out of the tree that we were just sitting under, and it would have landed right on top of us if we didn't move. I still don't know if I believe in the ladybug prophecy, but I'm glad it happened that day. Wow, that's really wild. This is the first time that I ever heard a bad luck story with the ladybug. Typically, ladybugs are known to bring good luck, but in this case it brought bad luck to the girl. with electric stoves. Ooh. It was 1976. I hitched a ride on a 2-engine World War II Curtiss Wright C-46 cargo plane and was sitting up front with the pilots. It was carrying a load full of dried fish from the Amazon at Ladybug to Bogota, high in the mountains. We were flying at 1,500 feet over an endless jungle. Occasionally we passed over a muddy brown meandering river, but it was jungle, jungle, jungle. Then suddenly the number 2 engine started sputtering. The pilots reacted lightning quick, flipping about a dozen switches. Then they watched the dials, waited, and listened. I thought I was about to die. Fortunately, I was mistaken, but having had that experience, I know how I would feel if it were to happen for real. No panic, just a feeling of resignation. So this is how it's going to end. After about a minute, the engine recovered and the flight continued its destination. The punchline is that the company, DESxASMR, shut down in 1982 after 3 of its planes crashed with no survivors. Oh my goodness. Ooh, that's the worst. Being in a plane, not knowing if it's going to go down or not, and there's nothing that you can do. Oh my gosh, what a nightmare. When I was 2, my younger sister and I were playing in the little plastic pool by the big pool that my other older sister and her friend were in. They were 14 and 15 years old and were supposed to be watching us. I decided I wanted to swim to her, and about halfway across the big pool, I got tired and just remembered looking up at the sunlight through the water and thinking how pretty it was. The next thing I know, I'm waking up in an ambulance with people rushing all around me. Thankfully, my eldest sister knew CPR and saved my life that day. To this day, I still remember everything, and I was very relaxed when I went under. I don't remember freaking out. I just went with it. It was a joint effort, but both my sisters saved my life that day. When I was 19, I lived with my brothers out on a pretty empty 7-acre property we got from our grandparents in rural Kansas. One evening, I was driving home, and it was really stormy, hard to see with lots of lightning. What happened next was probably the scariest thing that has ever happened in my life. A small little prop plane, big enough for maybe 3 or 4 people, came flying down and crash landed just a few feet in front of the car. I slammed on the brakes and sat there in shock. The debris of the plane was scattered across the road and in the grass by the side of the road. Then it hit me that whoever was in the plane probably needed help. I got out of the car and ran over there in the rain. It was really hard to see inside, but I got a glimpse of movement. I called 911 and I called my brothers for help. They showed up within minutes, and emergency crews were there within half an hour. There were only 2 people in the plane. One of them survived, but with some serious injuries, and unfortunately, the other pilot did not survive. It turned out that they had gotten caught up in a storm, which was too much for their little plane, and they tried to land in our field, but the winds were too strong and the field was not suitable for landing, and they crashed. We still keep in touch with the surviving pilot, and I think back and realize how lucky I was to not have been hit by that plane. What in the heck? Wow. That's so scary, jeez. I was on a motorcycle with my then fiance. We were going to his family farm to set a date for our wedding. I said, let's not take the bike. I just don't feel right. But he just laughed at me. So we took the bike. A half a block away, we were hit by a car. It was his cousin coming to our place. I hit the windshield and died. They brought me back. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, that reminds me of my friend wasn't on a motorcycle. But she was in her car arguing with her boyfriend, and somehow the argument got really, really bad, and they were on the highway, and they got into a really bad accident, and they hit maybe the divider, something like this, but it threw her out of the car, my cousins just a little bit away from me, but they were like lollygagging and having fun out there. I said, no, I gotta go. I told my cousin, turn back, I gotta go. And they were just taking their time. Turn back, and I see my cousins are stuck out in the water and they can't get back. And they actually had to send a rescue boat to go and get them. It's because the undercurrent was pulling them out, and there was a girl with my cousin, and she was panicking, so scared, and she was grabbing onto my cousin, pulling on her, panicking. Could have drowned her with the way that she was panicking. You know, it was incredibly scary, and I said, thank you, God. Who knows what would have happened if I stayed out there and we were far apart and you couldn't get back and it was pulling you out further. Oh no, no, no. Scary stuff. I almost died when I was 14. I was riding my skateboard to a friend's house at about 10 p.m. on a Thursday, so the streets were dead. I got to a street that I have to cross to get to their house. This street was very long and straight. It was very common at this time in the 90s for people to drag race on the street. I had just started to skate across when in the back of my mind, I heard my mom and dad say, never ride across the street, always get off and walk. I remember thinking, there's literally no one on the road right now, and started to skate across, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that I shouldn't, so I get off my board and kick it up to start walking. About 5 seconds later, a sports car going over 100 miles per hour blew past right in front of me. If I decided to skate across, I would have been in front of the speeding car, and I do not believe I would be alive today. I kind of just stood in the middle of the crosswalk for a good minute, freaking out before continuing on my way. Still freaks me out to this day. About how close my parents came to receiving an unfortunate phone call. I had just broken up with my ex a few days before and wasn't sleeping well. I was coming home from a friend's house at 4 a.m. after watching a movie marathon. I was in my little VW Rabbit going about 70 miles per hour. I fell asleep and crashed my car. The entire car was crushed except where I was sitting. That area was untouched. I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. The strange thing is, my little brother had passed away on the same date and the same time and the same situation exactly 1 year earlier. I thank God every day I did not die. It was truly a miracle. What weird coincidence is that? Next story is when I was around 13 years old, we, who is my parents, sister, aunt, uncle, and 2 cousins, went on a family trip to visit my grandparents in Florida. My grandparents had a really nice in-ground swimming pool, so that's where the kids spent most of our time. One day it started lightly raining, which didn't bother us at all, but my mom and aunt made us get out of the pool immediately. Within 60 seconds of us getting out, the pool was struck by lightning. To this day, I am cautious about even the slightest amount of rain. Okay, so I was surfing at the age of 13 and I saw this really good wave and started to paddle to catch the wave. Then all of a sudden, a shark comes out of nowhere and was swimming near me. It swam away, but less than 100 yards away from me, another surfer was being pulled under by this shark. He ended up being okay, thank God. All I think about now when I'm surfing is that other surfer could have been me. I really have a lot of respect for surfers and people and, you know, sports like this that have these kind of close calls with these ocean creatures, a shark, and they still get back into the water and do what they love. I would think that the fear of that happening again would be so great, but I guess that the love of what they do is